this happening and why now? Let's bring in our front bench to talk about that. Sharon Carr is a CTV News political analyst, as well as former Deputy Chief of Staff to former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. Laura D'Angelo is with Enterprise Canada. She previously worked in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office. Jamie Ellerton is a conservative strategist and the founder and principal of Canaptus. And rounding us out tonight, Sebastian Skamsky was the Director of Media Relations to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Gentlemen, we wish you were also in studio with us right now. Sharon, I'll start with you. Is this just random that all of these people who we so identify with the previous Prime Minister and his cabinet are now headed off to exercise diplomacy for Canada?
Nothing's ever random in politics, Vashi. Listen, I think that a lot of people since the election have been saying this is the same Trudeau type of government, right? We have the same members, the same ministers as part of the team. And anyone who's been part of this circle, I think, would have kind of estimated that this was going to happen. So I think we knew these changes would happen. When you take people like former Minister Blair and Wilkinson out of cabinet positions, it's kind of natural to expect that they're going to have to do something with them. So there's been rumors and speculations for quite some time. And I think you even mentioned it now. Minister Wilkinson is one that I think has been the least confirmed amongst everyone.
I was told very directly he's still making his decision.
Yeah, and we've all heard a bit of that. In addition to former Minister David Lametti, who it's speculated that he's supposed to go to the UN now. So I'm not surprised by this. I think this is going to allow Prime Minister Carney some room to bring in some more fresh faces so that they can get away from it's the Trudeau gang, and it's actually the Carney gang.
How much of this, not in Mr. Lametti's case, but in the other two, and Ms. Freeland as well, Laura, are people who have much less stature in this government than they did under Justin Trudeau? How much of that do you think factors into, maybe it is my time to move on?
I'm sure that factors in. I think it's very hard as an MP to go from sitting around the cabinet table, being part of those really big discussions for the direction of a government and making big decisions for Canada, to sitting in the House of Commons and not having a voice at that table. Obviously different for Minister Freeland, who did have one of those voices. But I think also we're looking at people who still have a lot of public service left in them, right? I think when you look at Minister Wilkinson, if he chooses to take one of these appointments that it's rumored to be in the EU, it's going to be a really interesting position given his former cabinet roles and the need in the EU for LNG and Canada's potential ability to supply it.
I feel like I heard either Jamie or Sebastian sigh when you guys were talking. So my random guess is Sebastian. So I'll throw it over to
ding, 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 ding.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, what are your thoughts? Do you align in thinking with Sharon and Laura on the nature of these appointments?
Look, Vashi, first of all, we shouldn't be treating diplomatic appointments, which are important, by the way, as retirement homes for former politicians. I want to make that clear, and I think that's very telling that Prime Minister Carney is treating these appointments this way. I don't mean to borrow from the words of President Trump. I do this very rarely, but we really are not sending our best across the pond and into the States. These people have been the architects behind the disaster of the last 10 years of Liberal government. If my co-panelists Sharon and Laura are thinking that perhaps this is a way of bringing in new blood, I would just say these are the people that Prime Minister Carney thinks represent the best of Canada. He is sending potentially to the EU somebody who, as involved in the Trudeau government, had prevented LNG and other exports from actively taking place. I really don't know if that's the message we need to be sending. It is a very contradictory message. And it really is troubling that Prime Minister Carney's using these roles in a way to benefit himself and to eliminate some of the obstacles potentially in his caucus.
It's difficult to figure out exactly what you're thinking, but I'll take that and swing it over to Jamie and ask just more generally on the politics of all this. Jamie, you and I were talking about this on the radio, and Laura on the radio earlier today. But if there is a desire, and I take Sebastian's point that it should be about more than this, and maybe it is. I don't know the thinking of everything, but I can understand how the appearance would be one that Sebastian gleaned from it. But if the idea is to turn a page on, as Sharon put it, like the idea that this is one in the same government of Justin Trudeau, which has certainly been a criticism from the federal Conservatives, does something like this accomplish a departure or a delineation, or, is Mark Carney able to do that without this?
Yeah, the 90s anthem closing time comes to mind. You don't have to go home, but you really ought not to stay here is essentially the message that Prime Minister Carney is sending to these Trudeau-era ministers. And I think what you're seeing here is probably early moves for the Prime Minister to try and actually put his own shape and recruit new blood into the Liberal Party and into the front benches. There were very few candidates that are new that were elected this past spring. And so I think this is him continuing to work to put that new leadership in. I think when you look at the broader politics of this, I think it's undeniable that Prime Minister Carney is changed, and Canadians don't think he's the same as Justin Trudeau, so much so that Conservatives are stopping to trying to make to that comparison. But I do think what comes next and what ultimately will be the legacy and kind of the shape and how a Mark Carney government's going to act, he can't do everything by himself. And by moving these people off to diplomatic appointments, it makes room to bring some new blood into the House of Commons and to have whatever the Carney view of government and the Liberal Party is going to be to start to take shape.
They're in a minority, Sharon, right? Is there any danger in putting these seats into a by-election cycle?
There's always a danger. To be honest, you never know. Things can change. But I think that they're willing to take that risk. I think that depends on when they're going to call the by-elections. It depends on what kind of candidates are going to run in these spots. But just to go back to Seb's point as well, this is not something that's new. Harper's done it. Past governments have done it. It's very frequently done where you appoint a former politician or an outgoing politician into an ambassadorship role, kind of soft landing, hard landing, however you want to look at it. But having these by-elections, I think, will allow Carney to put in some of his own blood. Who knows? I'm hearing speculations. Maybe there's more candidates like the Tim Hodgson types that they might want to bring, who can bring a certain stature and level of economic understanding to the cabinet table, which they need at times. So I say politics is always risky, and it's a risk worth taking.
Seb, do you think that if part of the goal is to further delineate themselves as a government from the Trudeau era, does this accomplish that? And do you think it will inform any of the criticism from the Conservatives?
Well, I think it does quite the opposite. I mean, listen, again, these people, the ones listed in your list and your reporting, were amongst the most fervent, ideological Trudeau ministers. These weren't people who were kind of on the edge of the cabinet table. These were the people who were chiefly responsible for much of the blunders. And I'll remind, of course, it is Mr. Lametti who is the Prime Minister's currently his chief political advisor, who after just 2 months is now seeking this soft landing, which I think begs another litany of questions. It just does not inspire confidence that when Prime Minister Carney, especially in a time where we actually need to rely on these people more than usual for the purposes of trade, for the purposes of diplomatic relations beyond just the U.S., that Prime Minister Carney in the pool of all of Canada is reaching simply for past Trudeau cabinet ministers that have really put this country on the back foot, again, as it relates to resource extraction and the ability for us to actually deliver gas to Europe. And obviously on the crime file, where Mr. Lametti was a total failure, which resulted in much of the bail problems we have right now. So no, it doesn't inspire confidence, and I don't think it offers any delineation where he's tapping into those Trudeau big shot names to fill these roles.
Laura, I'll get you to respond to that. And then also weigh in, if you could, on Mr. Lametti, because that is sort of unique to all of this. It is odd that he would have been in that role for just 2 months, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I hear Seb's point and really trying to draw that connection. I think it's pretty clear when MPs are leaving the House of Commons that they are no longer part of that core team that a prime minister or a leader, a political leader has. And I think in this case, you are looking at individuals who have a lot of experience in the public service, a lot of experience with diplomatic relations, and that can be really, really valuable to understand the machinations of political life and then take that to a diplomatic role gives you a little bit of an edge. So I think that it's a bit of a stretch to say this creates no delineation at all. You're going to have potentially multiple new MPs in the House of Commons in very short order. The Mr. Lametti piece is particularly unique. It is very unusual to see someone in that senior of a political role for that short of a time. Now, that said, if the rumors are true that he's headed to the UN in particular, that is also a very deeply political position, and one where it would make perfect sense to me that Prime Minister Carney would want someone he trusts deeply and who understands his views around international relations in particular in that role. And I think that it would, Mr. Ray was similar in that way for Prime Minister Trudeau, right? They were very close. They were able to talk a lot. They really sort of understood each other. This would make sense to me in that respect.